One.
Welcome to the new JFK Show number 140. We've got one of the most special shows ever. We've got David Martin. He's also known as DC Dave, one of the first and most famous bloggers out there. And if you go to his website, it's just a wealth of information. So David, we're going to turn it over to you, and you tell me where to go on the screen, and we'll be recording the screenshots as we go.
Well, you're looking, I guess, at the collection of articles I've written related to the John F. Kennedy assassination. That's what I'm seeing on the screen here.
And did you want to start here?
Yeah, well, the very latest article that I've written, I suppose, which was a follow-up. It's two things it's kind of a recapitulation of my interest in what you might call deep politics. Because I got interested in the Vince Foster case, living here in D.C., the fact that I had gone to college with Vince Foster. He was 2 years behind me at Davidson College in North Carolina. And I had just seen the JFK movie, you know, the Oliver Stone movie. And it was sort of a revelation to me at that point, because I'd read a lot of the books. I'd read Mark Lane's book. I'd read Sylvia Maher's book on the accessories after the fact. I'm very familiar with the case. And then I saw how the press responded to JFK the movie, which struck me. It's almost sort of a condensation of the literature on the subject, nothing really remarkable. And the press just went ape, you know, and at that point, you know, the scales fell from my eyes. The problem is with the press more than anything. And then the Foster thing occurred, and I noticed the similarity, the total lack of curiosity on the part of the press. They seem to simply want to sell the one official story. And so at that point, I'm off and running, you know, and I really couldn't get anybody interested in the Foster case. Initially, I was in contact with the people at the Liberty Lobby, you know, that had the Spotlight newspaper, and I couldn't get them interested in the case. So I was really sort of laboring on my own for most of 1993, looking at the anomalies and writing things for the drawer, writing poems that didn't have anybody to show them to. And then I made the acquaintance of the people at Accuracy and Media, who were politically a lot more conservative than me at that time. I've come in their direction, and now that Reed Irvine has died, I'm not quite sure about that organization. But Reed seemed to be the real deal, and was interested in looking in the case. And then comes along Christopher Ruddy from the New York Post, and we're off and running at that point. Ruddy has proved to be a major fake, as I think I've got a big Ruddy expose on my website called Double Agent Ruddy Reaches for Media Pinnacle. This is before the Newsmax organization that he fronts and it takes credit for, became a regular TV network and rival of Fox and Company. So if the Foster case follows on the Kennedy case in the similarity.
Gary, I want you to stay there at the top. I want to talk about it.
Okay.
I like your notion of fake scholarship on fake news, Dave. I mean, in your definition of fake news is stories that have no factual basis but are presented as facts. In other words, fabricated stories masquerading as news reports that are supposed to be accurate and true.
Yeah. That's the definition of these two economists.
Well, that's not a bad definition, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, exactly. If you're going to study it as a phenomenon, and really what they did in their study, let's get to that, you know, because.
Well, I'm intrigued by what I take it is their argument that the Trump victory was caused by voters being deceived by fake news reports. implying that they're poorly educated or really gullible, stupid, or dumb.
That was the initial premise, and that's what they set out to study. And from their study, they did their own survey, and they made up some fake news, and they had some actual fake news that they surveyed people, and they discovered that it was trivial in importance. That's really, it's hard to pick that out of their study, though, because it's full of so much mathematical mumbo jumbo.
Shall we say sophisticated bullshit?
You got it. I mean, it's just a big, huge cloud of it. And so, but they found that it was of no consequence. But they couldn't just come right out and say that. So at the end, they changed their conclusion, and that gets back to the one that this one follows up on. The first one was called Fake Scholarship on Fake News, but this is more on fake scholarship. Well, anyway, in that previous article that I take apart their conclusion, they get into conspiracy theories and surveys of how many people believe conspiracy theories, and they call it cousins to fake news.
Yeah, but how do they know that theories aren't true?
Well, Jim, we did a show the other night where we mentioned Alfred Goldberg, where he said about the elves, remember?
Well, if you can scroll down a little bit here, how do you know they aren't true? It's interesting. Yeah, keep scrolling down. Hold on. Wait.
Yeah, here, getting to JFK, for example. 13 examples.
Too far.
Too far?
No, it's not too far. You're right, Gary. Go back up.
A little bit farther up, just above that misrepresenting. Up. It's
Am I going the right way?
Go the other up.
My mistake, Gary. You're going the wrong way.
Going the wrong.
Stop there.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, this whole term, this fake news, has really come back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah. Exactly. I'd say, never mind that, as these authors say, these conspiracy theories, I'm quoting them now, these conspiracy theories are slightly different than most of the fake news we study, in the sense that many fake news articles can be traced back to a single person who invented the article without any facts to back it up. Whereas some conspiracy theories could, in principle, be true and often have no unique origin. End of quote. And I'd say, Mike, merely slightly different? Really? Just often have no unique origin? And we're talking about things like 9/11. They would call those conspiracy theory, that it was an inside job, or that Oklahoma City bombing was an inside job. So, of course, none of them ever have a unique origin, but they say often have no unique origin. And how about never have a unique origin? And what could they possibly mean by the expression "in principle be true," as opposed to simply be true?
Because they're willing to imply it's merely a hypothetical possibility that they're true, not that they actually are.
They might, in principle, there's just a couple of extra words to make it more learned. So you don't have to have a PhD in economics from Harvard to write such silliness, but I think it helps. And if you see my link, I think it helps. This links to this guy Jonathan Gruber, the guy whose name has created the expression Grubergate. He's the Harvard-trained economist who was quoted as saying that they made the healthcare law complicated intentionally so people wouldn't understand it, because people are stupid. You know, they're so smart. Well, these guys have the same mentality. You know, they're just going to snow you. And then they get into in this survey. This is what really, really bad about. You know, they're not just show offs and trying to look smarter than they are, but they're fundamentally dishonest because they collect a group of these so-called conspiracy theories, and they look at the percentage of the people that believe each one at a certain time.
Yeah, let's scroll down. Let's scroll down a little, Gary.
Scroll down. There you can see.
Good.
Yes,
Good.
tell me when to stop.
Let's go ahead. Stop there.
Good.
And well, what they did is they picked out just parts of the Kennedy assassination question, and like number one, well, I'll have to read what I've written here. Al Cotton Genschau's Figure 7 lists 13 examples of conspiracy theories on a bar chart with the percentage of the American public believing each at the time and the year the survey was taken, arranged chronologically. Number one, President John Kennedy was assassinated by a segregationist extreme right-winger. Number two, President John Kennedy was assassinated by some communist or other radical. And then number 10 is Lyndon Johnson was involved in the assassination. That survey was taken in 2003. Well, you know, they've broken it up to obscure the fact that from the day it happened right to the present time, a great majority of the American people believes that it was a conspiracy involving more people than Lee Harvey Oswald. They had to go to some special, because if you go to the actual source, they use the American Enterprise Institute study. The Kennedy assassination is the very first one, and they have you scroll down and you look here in October 19, the various questions they asked. This is, if you go to their source, this is what they didn't want you to see. November, even right after it happened, they asked the survey, the American 62% thought other people were involved than Oswald. October 8, this question, do you think there was an official cover-up to keep the public from learning the truth about the assassination? 61% of the American public in 1988 said yes. 1992, 75% said yes. In 93, 81% said yes. In May in 1998, 74% said yes. In November 2003, 68% said yes. Any survey you take, all the time. So, I mean, it calls into question when we talk about the mainstream press.
Yeah.
Well, they're not mainstream when it comes to the Kennedy assassination. Not mainstream at all.
That's an excellent, excellent point, Dave.
And the really remarkable thing here is that the mainstream American public believes this in spite of the work that the so-called mainstream press has done, the propagandistic work they have done to sell this thing to the American public. And the American public is still not buying it. Imagine, you know, if they actually reported the truth. I mean, there'd be, 95% of the public would believe.
They haven't been buying it from day one, it looks like to me.
Well, I mean, you don't have to be educated. Just look at what happened. When Ruby comes and kills the guy, hold on a second here. No, we don't have just one lone crazed gunman. We have two lone crazed gunmen. What do you know?
A substantial portion of the public immediately thought Lyndon Johnson was behind it.
And a lot more than would like to admit it, I think. I think almost everybody thought deep down in, you don't want to.
Well, Jim, what comes to mind right away is the famous Katzenbach memo written 2 days after the assassination, where despite the government having a concerted efforts to lay the blame on Lee Oswald, you see right there that it had absolutely no effect, where 62% of the people immediately after the assassination knew it was a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's right. And Katzenbach memo was talking about the FBI maybe having an official report that would be enough to allay public concerns, but of course it required a commission. Lyndon cleverly contrived the use of the FBI as the sole investigative agency to make sure that only the evidence they wanted to come before the commission would be presented.
Well, everywhere you look, almost any scandal you want to look at, take like the attack on the Pentagon on 9/11. Who should be more concerned about the attack on the Pentagon than the military? But who is the investigators of the attack on the Pentagon? FBI. And I thought when there were plane crashes that it's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Agencies.
Yeah.
But what about WA-800? The FBI took that over immediately.
And the NTSB. And you'd also think, Dave, that when there are plane crashes, there'd be parts of planes left behind.
Yeah, but we saw the crashes on TV, so the FAA didn't have to investigate.
I know, that's what they said.
I mean, cover-ups are us. That's the FBI. Now, back to the Foster case, that is the one thing, the biggest revelation that the team of Patrick Knowlton, the dissident witness, his lawyer John Clark, and my friend the researcher Hugh Turley discovered. Clark was the first one to pick up on this, that contrary to what Christopher Ruddy was selling from the beginning, that the Park police kept the FBI out of the investigation, was not true. The FBI was on top of the investigation from the beginning, and the same team of of FBI investigators, I put investigators in quotes, I think, the same ones that worked for Robert Fisk worked for Kenneth Starr. And so if whatever Fisk found is going to be the same thing that Starr finds, because you can't embarrass yourself. It's the same people. So it was, and that's why they call their website, or they use the URL, FBIcoverup.com. The whole thing is an FBI cover-up operation. And you see a lot of the similarities. Sylvia Mahart's book is one of the great early books. She just picked apart the 26 volumes, or is it 27? Of the volumes of the Warren.
Yeah, Sylvia Mahart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
accessories after the fact.
She found, accessories after the fact. She found many, many examples, these FBI 302s, where they falsified the witnesses' statements. They simply changed what the witnesses told them. And they did that in the Foster case. That's their modus operandi. They don't record the statements. They write them down in handwriting, and then they type them up. And that's when the British reporter Ambrose F. Pritchard discovered Knowlton, and Knowlton had come forward, and first he called the park and said he was there at the park, and they showed no interest in what he'd seen, and only when it's only when the Starr team was appointed, and the FBI investigators went and interviewed Knowlton. But and then Ambrose Evans Pritchard, the British reporter for the Telegraph of London, stationed here in D.C., was able to track down Knowlton and read to him what the FBI had said that he had told them. And Knowlton said it was not true. There was someone else at the park where he stopped to relieve himself, to urinate. And the guy looked at him menacingly. And Knowlton has a very, very sharp memory. He remembered exactly what he looked like. The FBI wrote that he said he couldn't identify him. And the car that was parked there with Arkansas license plates was an older model Honda of a very markedly different color from Vince Foster's Honda. And Knowlton had a very clear recollection of that, and the FBI reported it. He described the car just like Foster's car was. So I mean, they falsified his testimony to make it fit with the official story. Well, this goes on throughout the. If you read Sylvia Mahar's book, you find many examples of that. And the one that it's been quite a few years since I read it, but I think concerning Oswald's demeanor when he came down from she supposedly, they discovered him there in the second floor, first floor, in the
second floor lunchroom.
Second floor in the restaurant, the snack bar, and he didn't seem to be winded or anything, like he'd been there for a while. But there was the FBI didn't, of the witnesses, they tailored the testimony to make it consistent with them having rushed down the stairs, because they knew what they were expected to get, and that's the way they tailored the testimony.
Yeah, he went down the stairs past two women that never saw him.
Yeah, I was going to say in particular the Vicki Adams and Sandra Stiles, where then Sandra Stiles was completely ignored. They only brought Vicki Adams, who was I believe 19 years old at the time, and they messed around with the timing so that it would have been after she had come.
I'm lost. Yeah.
Larry's saying that they messed around with the timing to make it look as though
they could not have
down after the event rather than during.
They could not pass each other.
I've read, but I know that's the sort of thing that the FBI did.
Yeah. Gary, go back to the earlier page about Dave's work on JFK. Just go to the the earlier page. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Tell us a bit about Dorothy Kilgallen, Dave.
Oh, I got to get up to there's a new book out on that one,
Yeah, Mark Shaw. We had him here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's one, and apparently there's some talk about
reopening the case.
Reopening the case, which would be wonderful. And I just read this. These are articles I got out of one book. I've only read the one book by a journalist by the name of Lee Israel.
Right.
And it was enough to convince me that she had been murdered just reading Lee Israel's book.
She has a one-on-one with Jack Ruby. She unwisely says she's going to blow the case out of the water. The next thing we know, she's dead. Her notes are gone. She did use barbiturates, but was very careful about it. She was dressed oddly. Then within days, her best friend, whom she was suspected and found dead too. I mean, it's a pretty blatant case, Dave. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And why I am so contemptuous, and that's the only word I can use, for lack of a stronger word, of journalists. Dorothy Kilgallen was one of their own. And this is, where's the sense of outrage?
That's right. She was a journalist herself. She gave her life in the pursuit of truth, and none of the other journalists were willing to pursue it or speak up for her or address the issue or make a case out of it.
And this is what I conclude in the article which you had open there. Not only are these guys bad scholars, like all of these journalists who've covered up these various things, they're just no damn good. And I say that in my article. They're no damn good. You know, that's all I can say.
Yes, they didn't even bother to let the people know why she died on What's My Line. She just wasn't there, and that was it.
That's
I was actually watching the show at that time, and the week before she was there, next week she wasn't there, and they never said a word about it.
Boy, thanks a lot.
I mean,
So Washington journalist thinks it's reasonable that James Forrestal leaped out of a tall window at the Bethesda Naval Hospital?
16th floor.
well, that's the most outrageous one of all. I mean, the father of now the late M. Stanton Evans has said it best in an article in the magazine for the John Birch Society. I forget the name of the magazine, but you know,
Watchmen?
that may be it. Yeah, I've written about it anyway. You know, the official story is that he attempted to hang himself out of the 16th floor window, and the sash, the
cord broke, huh?
He had around his neck, the bathrobe belt came loose somehow, and because he was discovered with this bathrobe belt around his neck, you know. So they got to explain that somehow.
Well, absurd. How long do they think a bathrobe belt is anyway? Where would you attach it that would be sufficient for a man to hang himself?
They never, you know, I've got the official investigation, and they never asked that question. You know, how much was it possible for him to have attached it? Was it long enough for him to have tied it around his neck, and also to have tied it to the radiator beneath the window ledge?
They take manifest absurdities and try to turn them into somehow remotely plausible claims, but it's also far-fetched, Dave. It's insulting to the intelligence.
If he's bent on killing himself, as I've written, was he so addled of mind to not realize that falling 16 floors would do the job quite well?
All by itself, without a bathroom cord?
Exactly.
It's like Gary Webb too. You know, he was
patently absurd on its face, sort of like the watching Building 7 fall like an obvious demolition.
Henry Marshall comes to mind to me.
Building 7. Yeah, Building 7 came down at free fall speed in a vacuum.
Yeah,
absolutely no resistance at all.
Well, but before then, you go back to the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City. Look at the damage to that building. You've got support columns far to the left, a couple of rows back from the ones closest to the street that have collapsed. The building is gouged out on the left side, you know, and the bomb out in the street, the truck bomb out in the street, was toward the right end of the building. And
the Oklahoma City blast destroyed or damaged 324 buildings within a 16-block radius, destroyed or burned 86 cars, and shattered glass in 258 nearby buildings.
Wow, that's some fertilizer bomb.
Yeah, well, again, here we're seeing the toasted cars. There was toasted cars in Oklahoma City, and the whole crime scene they roped off with radiation tape.
Yeah, but you can see that you just all it takes. I've got an article called "Lying About Bombing" in which I show pictures of the bomb damage in the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia. A more powerful bomb. You can look and just see from the damage that was done. It completely stripped off the facade of the building, but not a single support column. An even more powerful bomb than that was the one that killed the politician in Lebanon named Hariri. That one just absolutely stripped off everything, but not one support column came down. Because as General Benton Parton has pointed out, and the critic of the Murrah building explanation, that the air is a big absorber of energy. And the bomb blast loses energy quickly going through the air. And the explosive has to be right next to a powerful column to bring it down. And
there's no way a weak
our building was bombed
outside of this.
inside. And of course, there were reports. Initially, the initial reports talk about they found some bombs in the building, and that
I've got clips here of the local news talking about the FBI bomb squad taking a truck and removing unexploded bombs from the Murrah building.
There you go.
To me, Oklahoma City was the precursor to 9/11.
Absolutely.
The Murrah building was nuked, just like the World Trade Center buildings in New York, and the Pentagon were nuked on 9/11.
Well, the first World Trade Center in '93. When in '93, that was
the
93 for the Blind Sheik. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's one that the FBI knew all about it and let it go through.
Well, the FBI built the bomb, trained the driver.
Yeah. And we're not supposed to know all these things, It's just respect the news media. And
Larry Silverstein was planning. They were doing the plans for the new Building 7 in April of 2000, a year and a half before 9/11.
Yeah, I have a little bit of personal contact with both of those bombs. In a way, I have I worked for the government of Puerto Rico for many years, and I had a friend who worked for the Government Development Bank of Puerto Rico. They have an office right across the street from the World Trade Center in New York City. And I was on the phone to this guy when the earlier bomb went off. He interrupted. He says, "What was that?" So I heard his reaction to that first explosion. And then the guy that succeeded me in my job in Puerto Rico was at a meeting at the same office when the second World Trade Center attack occurred. And they saw the smoke. Their view of Tower 1 was obscured by Tower 2. They saw the smoke coming from Tower 1, from the hit of the first plane. And they were standing at the window watching the smoke. When they saw the airplane, this sort of gives the lie to those people who say that there's all smoke and mirrors, that there wasn't any actual airplane. Because this friend of mine was standing at the window and saw that second airplane heading directly toward them. And it veered into Tower 2, like it was drawn by a beacon from Tower 2. And his recollection is precisely what we see in the diagrams I've seen of the flight of the airplane that hit Tower 2. It's exactly what he recalled seeing. The airplane was headed directly toward them, and it veered off. As they're facing it, it veered off to their left. And so that meant the airplane turned right into Tower 2. I think there's no doubt it was drawn by a beacon of some sort in Tower 2. Hello?
Yeah.
No, Dave. Yeah. No, the plane, it was physically impossible for a real plane to enter either of those buildings, Dave. Flight 11 was intersecting 7 floors, Flight 175, 8 floors. Each floor consists of a steel truss connected at one end to the core columns, at the other to the external steel support columns, filled with 4 to 8 inches of concrete. At 208 feet on the side, that meant each floor represented an acre of concrete on a steel truss. It was intersecting with 8. The plane, had it been a real plane, would have crumpled external to the building and exploded from the heat of the friction, not entered all the way in effortlessly, as we see in the videos.
What was it?
It was a hologram, Dave.
But this guy saw a hologram?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. The
You can-
hologram technology is far advanced. I even have an Australian manual for an airborne hologram projector that corresponds to the analysis of Richard Hall from the UK in his Flight 175 3D radar study. But Dave, I don't want to divert you with subtleties about 9/11. I'm just
Yeah.
now. It was it was a very elaborate fraud. None of those 4 aircraft crashed on 9/11. None of them. 2 of them weren't even in the air.
And the other 2 weren't in service until 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
I would like to hear about how RFK could have saved his life and his country.
Yeah, Dave, that's extremely interesting. You and I started talking about that this afternoon, but I wanted to save it for now.
What was this? What you
About
were?
Bobby, how RFK could have saved his life
Oh.
and his country had he taken the offensive and
Yeah.
presented a speech to the nation.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that was yeah, I've been turning this idea over in my head for a long time, you know, how you know, Bobby Kennedy sort of an enigmatic character after, you know, he was the Attorney General after all. You would think he had some power.
Jack
But-
said later he wasted Bobby at justice. He should have put him in charge of the CIA.
Yeah. Now
If-
I've speculated.
if he'd done that, it would have made a huge difference to history.
Yeah. But of course, if he had tried to go on national television, they probably wouldn't have given him the airtime.
Right. Johnson would have locked it down.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
talking hypothetically.
Well, I mean, who owns the media? You know.
Yeah, exactly.
The-
But
the-
anyway, this
the
article,
people-
I speculate, let's just assume that, you know, the people say, well, he just went into some kind of funk, but how long does the funk last? You know, he didn't resign until after the Warren Commission came out, a little short time after that. That would have been a perfect time. And if he could have played it coy maybe and had them convinced that, well, for the good of the country, he was going to go along with everything. And then pulled a switch, similar to what Mark Antony did. You know, he played Hamlet, but he could have been a Mark Antony. You know, that's a fabulous speech in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. You know, when Mark Antony begins to speak, I have come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. And he talks about the honorable men, you know, constantly, these honorable men. Brutus and Cassius say that they're honorable men. And he slowly turns it around.
Scroll down, Gary.
These honorable men. Well, so I paraphrase the Mark Antony speech. Let's assume that Bobby Kennedy had delivered a speech like that. It would have produced just a result like you can't imagine.
A little more, Gary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to this day, even Bobby's kid won't really talk about it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty appalling too. The whole Kennedy family, you know, that they won't speak up. I mean, clearly, I mean the Sirhan thing is obviously fraudulent as well.
Yeah,
But-
that's another case of a guy getting shot from behind, from in front.
You know, but as they say in politics, you know, timing is everything. Had he actually come forward at that point, now he was probably biding his time, hoping, you know, when he became president that he would finally reverse the coup. Because what happened in November of '63 was a coup that we're suffering from even to this day. You know, I did a poem called "The Barren Summit" a few years ago. I think I did it upon the 30th anniversary of this 30 years and counting since Kennedy was killed, and their vacuum of leadership still has not been filled. Why should those shoes present such difficulty in filling? The candidates are weeded out by those who did the killing. And that's what we've been living under.
I love your use of the honorable man phrase. Scroll down a little further, Gary. I like this.
Where do we want it?
Right there.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. You make a lot of rather nice points about, of course, the throat wound having been fired from in front, which Malcolm Perry, who performed the simple tracheostomy incision in the throat, reported 3 times in response to reporters' questions during the Parkland press conference following the announcement that the president was dead, that the bullet was coming at him, that it was a wound of entrance, not a wound of exit.
Yeah.
And of course, you had other confirmations there, but when it was reversed, Bobby observes those who reversed the account were honorable men. I love it, Dave. You've done a wonderful job with this speech.
Let's just pick up here right at the top. Though others, I'm pretending I'm Bobby Kennedy here. Now, though others might have changed their accounts, bringing them into closer accord with the objective findings of the commission, a key witness who has not done so is the fine governor of the state of Texas, John Connally, who was gravely wounded in the assault that killed my brother. To his credit, he has steadfastly maintained that he heard the initial shot, the one that struck my brother in the neck, and turned around to see John grasping his throat with both hands. At that point, he says he felt a powerful blow to his back from the next shot, and indeed, in the film of the event, one can see his cheeks puff out. The second shot collapses his lung. One gunman with a bolt-action rifle could not have fired 2 shots so quickly, however. So the President's Commission has concluded that the bullet that struck my brother in the neck is the same one that passed through Governor Connally's body. Although he stands by his story, Governor Connally has assured us that the members of the commission are all such honorable men that it is their conclusion, rather than his experience, that must be believed. As Governor Connally, at least by his lights, is himself an honorable man. Yeah, that's the Mark Anthony style.
Yeah, I like
it. And I think, if you scroll out to the beginning,
up to the top?
Yeah, to the top of the speech, You see, begin, my fellow Americans, I come before you tonight to speak about the great efforts that your president and his appointed commission have made to lay to rest all the suspicions that have been raised about the death of my brother John. See, he's on there. They've done a great job in doing this. As you have no doubt heard, many, if not all, of the spectators who were present at Dealey Plaza in Dallas on that fateful day believe they heard shots fired from the front or front right of the presidential motorcade. The Secret Service driver of my brother's limousine temporarily brought it to a virtual halt, as though he feared proceeding into the hail of bullets. But the President's Commission, led by the esteemed Chief Justice Earl Warren, has assured us, after very careful examination of the facts, that the witnesses were all mistaken and that all the shots were fired from above and behind the car by a single gunman, and they are all very honorable men. But you can see the hint of doubt is being planted in the very first.
I like it, Dave. I like it a lot.
And it reminds me of Jim Garrison.
It builds up.
These honorable men would never lead us astray.
Still there?
Such import.
Yeah, now
it would freeze up.
Of course, Lyndon may have done a con job on Earl Warren, and this is, look, the Russians were behind it, and it'll be nuclear war, and the world will be, there'll be a nuclear holocaust if the whole truth comes out. So we gotta help cover up this thing.
Yeah, and I don't blame Earl Warren for
You don't think he bought that, huh?
Well, I think Lyndon Johnson basically put him in a hammerlock, and yeah, he kind of read him the riot act with nuclear war and millions dead, and he didn't really have. I think Earl Warren was just really put over a barrel.
He declined to do it many times. And
Yeah.
was actually crying. This, according to Jim Garrison, he was literally crying when he accepted to do it.
Well, Johnson humiliated him. I mean, Lyndon was a master of manipulating men, and he almost instinctively could discern their weaknesses. And although, of course, it was absurd for the Chief Justice to preside over the investigation, which, had it been successful, would have yielded presumably indictments of those who had been involved, which would eventually work their way through the judicial process to the Supreme Court. He was already compromised as the Chief Justice, and therefore should never have been anywhere near the investigation itself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the separation of powers of the Constitution is violated here.
But Johnson knew that by making the Chief Justice the head of the Warren Commission, that it would be virtually impossible for citizens to challenge the integrity of the commission, given their respect for the Chief Justice himself. He was unbelievably diabolically clever guy.
Yeah, quite a schemer. Ignorant in many ways, but quite a schemer.
Absolutely.
He even sent his executive assistant, Cliff Carter, down to Dallas, Dave, to make sure all the arrangements were in place for the assassination.
Ah, was not aware of that.
Yeah, talking about the press, I see down here the German Mauser. It was reported for 2 solid days, and then all of a sudden Walter Cronkite magically said they were wrong for 2 solid days about that.
Yeah, amazing. All these things they turned out to be wrong about, all these initial reports, like, everybody just hearing the shots and seeing the smoke from behind the stockade fence, but forget about that. And
You want to scroll down there? Scroll down.
You want to scroll further down, right,
Sorry?
Gary? Scroll down.
scroll down.
Yeah. Let's go further down. You might pick up with Oswald, someone else who apparently stuck by his story to the end is young man Oswald. But you've got Dinkins in here too. I mean, there's a lot of very important information woven into this.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Eugene Dinkin, because that's quite a story. I happen to have the original FBI documents and reports on Dinkin, and he was quite a guy. He was highly intelligent. He worked with what was known in those days as psychological sets, as he perused publication after publication, and that was actually his job. And he was able to discern, by the pattern of these psychological sets that he would review in publications like Stars and Stripes, that there was going to be a big event in November when JFK would travel to Dallas. So he tried to tell all of his superiors, and they all ignored him. He tried to go to Time Life. He tried to go to different editors of publications in Europe, and he finally gave himself up in Luxembourg because he had gone AWOL. So the story of, and then at the end, he ends up under psychiatric care. He sends Bobby Kennedy this letter on October 16, 1963, just a month before the assassination. Okay, and that's the letter that Bobby is talking about here in Dave's article.
We don't, as I say, we don't know if that letter ever reached Bobby Kennedy. And we don't.
Dinkin says that he sent it by registered mail, but he got the receipt back, but he never actually got a reply from Bobby Kennedy or any of his people, for that matter.
Right, and his mother later wrote Bobby Kennedy, but we don't know if.
No, and even a friend of Dinkin, Jim Garrison, during his investigation, and he vouched for him, because he read an article where Garrison mentioned him in an article in Playboy magazine. And so he saw the article and he wrote Garrison. And in this letter, he's telling Garrison exactly what Dinkin was doing, and that Dinkin was not crazy, that everything that he did and said was true 100%, and that the government had all the indications of what was going to happen to JFK, and they ignored it.
Well, they suppressed it for the obvious reason they were pulling it off. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, really, there's just anybody who wants to look at.
I like your penultimate paragraph, Dave. So now, my fellow Americans, I ask you to support my office as we open a truly independent investigation, one that will bring all the perpetrators of this heinous crime to justice, from the lowest to the highest. The course of our nation's history must be changed from its current detour into the abyss. If we allow this horror, this affront to the fundamental tenets of truth and justice to stand, we invite even worse horrors to follow. Leader after leader could be struck down, and our country and its people could be led off into one bloody foreign adventure after another on the most transparent of phony pretexts. I am confident that you will do your duty. And of course, Martin and Bobby himself were to follow. I mean, those words are prophetic, since of course they led directly into the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I don't think we could have had 9/11 without the Kennedy assassination.
No. I mean, it's just one thing. If you've got to nip it in the bud, you know, and we may have something worse, another false flag, you know.
Well, I mean, as a country, okay, we didn't deal with JFK, we didn't deal with Vietnam, we didn't deal with 9/11, you know, and look where we're at now.
We have false flags every single day, every day.
I see the name Ralph Leon Yates. You know, that's the air condition technician who gave an Oswald impersonator, imposter, a ride all the way to the TSBD.
Right.
Yeah, and he and just so coincidentally that the guy that he gave the Oswald, whom he gave the ride to, was talking about shooting the president from a window, you know, up in the TSBD. He drops him off, you know, never hears anything from him until the assassination. And he tries to tell everybody what happened, and they investigate. And he another one that got sent to the loony bin. You know, he ends up a very tragic story.
I've written two separate articles: one, abuse of psychiatry in the Kennedy assassination. One about Dinkin, the other about Yates. And the Yates story.
Go back to Dave's articles on JFK, Gary.
Yeah. James Douglas talks at length about Yates.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And Phil Nelson talks at length about Dinkin, but he gets his from. Oh, geez, I can't think of the previous author. He gets all of his information from him.
Well, the information that I have is all primary source material, so I'm able to go directly to the sources.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot better if you're going to primary source material. You're doing a lot better than most of the people who call themselves historians, professional historians.
Do you know that Wikipedia makes a practice of not allowing primary sources to be cited?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so they can guarantee they can present any view they want by citing secondary sources. And they won't allow those who are subjects of their entries to make corrections to the entries, even though they, of all people, would know most about the actual accurate history of their own lives and contributions.
I had one of my contributions to Wikipedia taken down concerning the birthplace of the karate master Masutatsu Oyama, or that would be Oyama Masutatsu in Japanese. It said in there, some say he was actually born in Tokyo, not in Jalapukto, Korea. I happen to be married to his niece.
And therefore would happen to have very accurate information about his
Yeah.
life and origins.
Primary source.
and I stated for a fact, that no, he was not born in Tokyo. I know his mother, and
Those are alternative facts. Those are fake news, Dave.
Fake news.
and it was taken down because it was primary source material. It was not. Eventually, it's straight now. They finally straightened it out. That the speculation about his having been born in Japan is all baloney.
After I participated in a conference about academic freedom, are there limits to inquiry, in which we discussed JFK, 9/11, and the Holocaust as our illustrations, I found my entry had been gutted. I mean, it had been very substantial with
I was going to say too.
detailed information about my research on JFK, 9/11, Wellstone, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, and so forth. But they preserved a copy of it very near to the time when it was gutted. So I published an article entitled James Henry Fetzer, Wikipedia, the Free Encyclopedia Busted, where I published the original and how they had gutted it, just showing the comparison paragraph by paragraph. It was stunning.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's a matter of whether the pages of Wikipedia are policed or not.
Well, sure, it's a Zionist op, Dave.
It is definitely an op of some sort.
Oh, sure. No, it's a Zionist op. There's no question about it.
But the definitive book on Amelia Earhart's disappearance is written by Mike Campbell, called "The Truth at Last." And she was taken prisoner by the Japanese, and it's just numerous witnesses, just the chock-a-block. This book is just chock-a-block full of witnesses, and it's really the definitive book. But
why did they want to suppress it?
Well, it has to do with the beginnings of World War II and the pre-knowledge. The biggest thing is that we had broken the Japanese codes.
Sure.
And a lot earlier than anybody realized. And she was on a semi-official spy mission of that round the world trip, feeling out what the Japanese reaction would be to flying over their territory, or very close to their territory.
Well, that's very, very interesting, Dave. That's rather important and consequent. It's like the Lusitania being loaded in its keel with weapons of war about which the public was never informed, so they could make out that the U-2 had just viciously taken out a passenger liner, not a legitimate target of war.
And the Earhart thing is important because of the degree to which they've continued to cover it up. And I mean, Campbell has just done tremendous work on the story, better than anybody. And I've reviewed the book on my website. I think it's under the World War II category. And the book from time to time has been put up on Wikipedia, and they take it down immediately. There's no mention of it on the Amelia Earhart page.
Dave, as Gary's hourglass would reflect, we're nearly at the end, but we'd like to have you back already next week if you're amenable.
Yeah.
Next week, let's see, possibly, yeah.
Well, you let me know, confirm it by email, but we'd like to get you back. Your vast repository of knowledge and information, we'd like to pick your mind a bit more.
Yeah, pick his brain a little bit.
That's right.
All right, well, we'll try to get David Martin back. And this has been DC Dave, one of the first and most famous bloggers out there. And we're more than happy to have him on our show, and in hopes of having him back next week.
Maybe we can do the 17 techniques of truth suppression next week, okay?
All right.
Perfect, Dave.
It's your call. All right, this has been the new JFK Show, number 140. We'll see you next week, fellas.